How do you know if you're a dyslexic, agnostic, insomniac? You lay awake at night wondering if there's a dog. God, dog. So I've heard that God gave us both dogs and cats as pets, and many other kinds of pets too, but dogs and cats here in this view, that dogs and cats are there for very different reasons. That when you are feeling down on yourself, when you're feeling subpar, having a bad day, feeling like nobody loves you, there's nothing like a dog to come up and remind you that you are awesome, right? And you are loved unconditionally. But when you're feeling a little cocky, a little full of yourself, you have a cat there to remind you that you're really nothing special, right? So that you have a purpose for each. Although I should say, we have had both cats and dogs. Right now we have a cat and not a dog at the moment. And our cat is not like that. She does not fit the stereotype, that sort of aloof, who do you think you are kind of attitude that cats are known for, right? She's a very sweet, very loving cat, and her favorite thing is she'll just walk up to you and she'll just flop down on the floor, just saying, just pet my tummy, She loves to be loved, and she loves to love. And she'll follow us around. I think she doesn't quite know what to do with this big house now, because we adopted her in December of 2021 when we were in a 2-bedroom apartment. And it's very easy to get your head around that space. It wasn't that big. Now, the house we're in now isn't huge, but it's bigger than before, so, she's still kind of getting the idea of what it means to be on these different floors and all these different rooms. So she'll follow us around from floor to floor to kind of nap near whatever it is we're doing. She likes to be part of the action, but also asleep. So she's very sweet like that. But we also give our cat, her name is Charlotte, by the way, in case you didn't know that. We give her credit for having helped us find that perfect house on Charlotte Street. Because we had named her Charlotte well before we were even looking for a house, and then all of a sudden we discovered, we have a lot of friends who live on Charlotte Street already. So we asked Charlotte to help us manifest that. And we got it. We got the house on Charlotte. So now people assume we named the cat after the dog, after the house, and the street, but that's not the case. So regardless of what your pet is like, and they're all doing really well right now, so knock on wood, this is nice. Maybe your pet is aloof, or maybe they're more clingy. Maybe they're loud, or maybe they're quiet, maybe they're compliant or rebellious. Either way, we love our pets, don't we? We love them. And I think one of the reasons why we love our pets so much is because they just are who they are. And of course you can train, you can work with them, you can scold them if you need to, but really in the end they're just behaving according to their nature. They don't have any shame. They don't have any self-doubt. I mean, you see a dog might feel sorry for having eaten out of the trash or something like that. But that's not shame. That's not like a personal sense of, that's just guilt, or it's a premonition that I'm about to be in trouble. But they don't have that shame that we struggle with. Now, we're always talking about the human condition, whether it's in religious circles or philosophy or self-help. There's this thing called the human condition, right, that we're always trying to figure out. But there is no such thing called the canine condition or the feline condition. Because they just know exactly how to be the creatures they were made to be. They're just fully integrated, fully actualized. And even when they're unpleasant, for that reason, we love them. They show us something important about creation, about ourselves too. And I think that was part of God's design for us to have this strong connection with animals. And you see, we read that in Genesis where God said it's not good for humans to be alone. And of course we know then God created a second human as a result to solve that problem. But the first thing God did after sort of acknowledging this problem was to have Adam go and name all of the animals. Now, you may know that naming is a device of conferring honor and respect on someone, especially in ancient cultures. And we see that, of course, when parents name children. We see it also when God names and renames people. Is that naming is a moment of truly seeing and recognizing and honoring. This is so entertaining up here, sorry. I just have to, there you go. That's what you get for sitting in the front row. But naming is also a moment of connection, a moment of establishing relationship. So that when God said to Adam, name all these animals, God is saying, these are not here, this isn't a zoo that I made for you. It's an integrated world of relationships and connections, and I want you to be part of that. So, because I believe that our animals are there to remind us that we have that essential God-given nature. And that God knew that we were going to struggle with what it means to be human. And so God wanted to connect us with what is earthly about us. And we read in Psalm and we read in Hebrews, which is fun where it quotes it in Hebrews, where the writer says, someone said somewhere that we were made a little lower than the angels. And we're like, no, it's Psalm, it's right there. We read it twice this morning. Who are we to be, that God would notice us, that God made us a little lower than the angels? We could say a little higher than the animals, and a little lower than the angels. And that distinction, what makes us different from actually both of those, is that ability to love freely, that when God created us in God's image, perhaps the key aspect of who we would be is that we have the power to love freely, otherwise known as free will. And free will means that we can choose otherwise. We can choose to behave contrary to our created nature. Without that choice, then you can't call any of the love that we give or receive truly free. And so here we are wrestling with, well, we have this. I could be truly myself, or I could try to be someone else, or I could try to measure up to this profile that the world has created for me to live. And I'm constantly making these choices and struggling with what it means to be human. And that is what I see as the human condition. We have earth beneath us, and we're part of the earth. We're these biological creatures with meat and with fluids, and we're earthy. But we're also spiritual creatures. We're transcendent. We're eternal in our souls, and we feel that in our existence, that we are more than just this sort of combination of cells that we carry around. And I think that God has given us animals to look into their eyes, dogs, cats, hamsters, rabbits, fish, birds, and to see our goodness, the goodness of our creation reflected back at us. And I think this is true of children, too, and of babies. Because when we were babies, when we were little, we actually had a lot in common with the animals, right? We simply lived according to our nature. We weren't making these mortal choices and facing ethical dilemmas. We just were what we were. And that's why nobody ever blames a baby for something, right? You can be angry with a baby. You can resent a baby. You can't really blame them for anything. Just like with a dog or a cat, it's not ever really their fault because they're just behaving according to their nature. But we do this thing called growing up and maturing and starting to understand. We move from that space of being fully grounded, being so aware of just who we were made to be as these biological creatures, and we start to little by little gain a sense of our transcendence, of our potential to rise above what we were born into. And that's when we start to struggle. We can feel a little bit like a tree reaching for the stars. It's this tall tree, and it sees the heavens up there, it sees the galaxies, and just reaches and stretches for that. But It's rooted in the ground. And humans are compared to trees a lot in Scripture, and maybe that's one of those reasons. We reach for the heavens, but we stay rooted in the ground, in who we were created to be. And I feel like just like God called Adam to connect with the animals in Mark, that Jesus called us to connect with children. And maybe for some similar reasons. I'm sorry, God and Adam in Genesis and Jesus in Mark. Now there's a lot of other stuff in the Mark passage too. And I don't want to feel like I'm skipping over any of what Jesus is saying about divorce, because that can be very difficult to read, difficult to understand. And if you want to talk about that afterwards at any time, I'd love to. I think, just really quickly, I think we're coming from a historical context where marriage was something very different from what we know it to be today. And Jesus, in his compassion, is talking to that context. And so don't be afraid to talk to me afterwards if that's something you really have been working on or something that really troubles you. I get it. But I want to focus right now on just the goodness of our creation, of that split duality of what it means to be human. And to see how God urges us to stay connected to what keeps us grounded. Because this civilization, Western civilization, society, has taught us to be brain people, right? Has taught us to focus on what is kind of a higher consciousness about ourselves, and maybe even to sort of float around in our heads all the time and forget how physical we are, how bodily we are, how earthly we are. And I think in order to remember that, God urges us to connect with creation, connect with the animals we love, to kneel down and have a conversation with a small child, to play with them on the floor. Don't discount the importance of actually being down near the ground, of touching what's beneath us and remembering that we are bodily, we are physical, but we are in such a holy way. It's not dirty, it's good. And we forget that a lot. So I hope that when we look in the eyes of our dog or cat or hamster or fish or bird, that we see that holiness reflected back to us, that God made it and said it was good. And God made us and said it is very good. To remember what it means to be human, both lofty and lowly, both simple and sophisticated. Even when it is a struggle, and it often is. We know that God made us this way and is never going to give up on helping us forward on this journey until we find the fulfillment of who we were created to be. Amen.